welcome to the channel. The following story is one of many that have come from the depths of our community. We invite you to join us as we bring these stories to life. But first, as always, viewer discretion is advised. The story, They Live in the Plaster, Part 1, The Moving In. It had been a long search, but Clara finally found it, the perfect New York City apartment for rent. Located at the very top of an old brick building on the Upper West Side. The apartment had high ceilings, huge windows, and enough space for her small studio. And best of all, the rent was cheap, cheaper than it should have been for such a large place. But when Clara brought up the discounted rate with the landlord, he just shrugged and said, "If I can find someone to take it, I will rent it for a song. You seem like you could use a nice place, and I could use a reliable tenant. It's a great place. Why did the last one move out? Because they couldn't handle it," he said with a wink and a shrug. So Clara didn't think much of it. She signed the lease, packed her things, and moved right in. That was about 2 weeks ago. Now she was unpacking, listening to music and sipping wine when she noticed something strange. The walls felt warmer than they should be. She thought nothing of it until the next day when she woke up early, turned on the lights, and saw the wallpaper peeling away from the wall. She sighed. This place was full of quirks, but this would be a big repair. Maybe she should have asked for a discount. As she peeled the wallpaper off the wall, she noticed some old writing on the wall underneath. It was faded, but it looked like coordinates and a date written in pencil. She took a picture and posted it on social media with a caption, "Who knows what secrets this apartment is hiding?" Within minutes, she received a reply from a local historian who sent her the original map and explained the location was the site of an old asylum that burned down in the late 1800s. The patients were removed and the building was torn down, replaced by the apartment complex where she lived. All of them except for B. There was never another building constructed there. And now Clara knew why the rent was so cheap and why the landlord seemed desperate to rent out his apartment. She should have read the reviews. The people who lived in 4B didn't stay for long. Some said it was haunted and that they heard screams in the night. Others said that the apartment made them feel sick and unsettled. After reading the comments, Clara tried to dismiss the stories as nonsense. She couldn't believe that ghosts were haunting her apartment. She was a practical girl. There had to be a logical explanation behind the cool drafts and unexplained sounds. So she started paying closer attention. One night, while she was making dinner, she heard footsteps above her apartment. She looked around. There was no one else home. Later that week, she started hearing guttural whispering coming from inside the walls. It sounded like voices trying to speak a foreign language. At first, she thought maybe it was just mice, but then she realized they were coming from inside the walls. One night, she even swore she heard what sounded like a woman crying. While researching the history of her apartment, Clara came across a name, Martha. Supposedly, Martha was the last person to live in 4B before it became vacant again. According to public records, she lived there for almost 50 years before moving out and then dying soon after. What was strange was she wasn't listed as having any family. Did she have visitors? Clara wondered. Then one night, Clara discovered a floorboard that creaked when she stepped on it. When she lifted it, she found a hollow space underneath. Inside was a leather-bound journal. She opened it and saw the neat, cursive writing of another time. The entries were dated over 70 years ago. Clara began reading. Day 1. Today they came to take me to the doctor. I don't want to go. Day 17. They say I must be strong for the good of everyone. Day 28. There are no doctors here. There are only injections. And when they enter the room, there are only screams. Day 35. There are other patients. Now they call me crazy, and I am. Day 47. They've learned to mimic my mother's voice. And then the journal ended. Who were they? Were they the doctors? Was Martha losing her mind? Had she written the coordinates on the wall, hoping someone would find them? Why did she stop writing? At this point, Clara was getting scared. She wanted to call the police, but what would she tell them? A ghost was haunting her apartment. No officer would take that seriously. Just then, she heard what sounded like whispers coming from the wall next to her. She picked up her phone and started recording. Part 2, the recordings. 3:17 a.m. Clara's phone recorded a faint sound of what seemed like whispering. The voices were low and guttural, almost impossible to decipher, like someone speaking into an abyss. The worst part was it didn't sound like anyone human. It sounded inhuman. When the recording stopped, it was 4:33 a.m. Just 16 minutes later, she heard a child's laughter coming from the walls. She thought she had imagined it, but then she checked her phone. The recording showed a tiny figure standing on the other side of the wall, silhouetted against a dim light. The child was holding a balloon and laughing. It was the same child from the painting, she realized, the one whose eyes glowed red. But that wasn't all. As the video continued, the camera shook. She could hear the child's laughter echoing through the apartment as the unseen figure ran from room to room. Then the door suddenly slammed shut. Clara jumped, but she had to keep recording. She had a feeling the more recordings she made, the clearer things would become. And then at 5:55 a.m., the whispers returned, but this time there was a clear voice amongst them. The inhuman sounds were still there, but now the voice spoke. It was the same voice that spoke to Clara in her dreams, the one that told her to keep the secret. In a raspy voice, it said, "Clara, we taste your fear." Then the voice was gone, to be continued. Part 3, the discovery. After finding the journal and the recordings, Clara couldn't sleep. She spent her nights barricaded in her bedroom, listening to the scratching and whispering. Sometimes it sounded like the voices were right outside her door. She would sob quietly into her pillow, wondering what to do. She wanted to tell someone, but who would believe her? She decided she needed proof. She started placing cameras all around the apartment, hoping to catch whatever was happening on camera. One night, she heard the scratching in the walls, and this time she followed the sound to the bathroom. On the other side of the wall, she heard the scratching and the inhuman whispering. She placed her ear against the wall and listened. The scratching grew louder. She could hear fingernails digging into wood. Then she heard what sounded like muffled voices talking in a language she didn't recognize. Suddenly, the scratching stopped. For a moment, all she could hear was the humming of the refrigerator and the distant sirens. Then she heard a knock. It sounded like someone knocking from the other side of the wall. She could almost feel the vibrations as whoever or whatever knocked. She wanted to call the police, but she knew they wouldn't believe her. She called the superintendent instead. Maybe he would listen. He came right over. It was an old brick building, so the walls were thick. He pressed his ear against the bathroom wall and smiled. "Don't worry," he said. "I've heard that sound before. It's probably just a mouse." He laughed and headed back downstairs. But Clara knew what she had heard. She didn't need to tell the police. She already knew what was going on. It wasn't mice or a gas leak or any natural explanation. Whatever was inside the wall wanted her to know that she wasn't alone. It wanted her to listen. Clara didn't wait around to find out what it would say next. She left the city. The final transmission. 2 days later, Clara uploaded her last video blog. Her face was gaunt. Her eyes were bloodshot. She hadn't slept in days. The wallpaper in the background was peeling itself away from the wall, revealing handprints. She whispered, "We kept the others company too." Then the video cut out to static. The scratching resumed. Do you believe Clara's story? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.